In today's world, where everyone is searching for their place in the sun, a question arises. What if the generally accepted notions of love are nothing more than a mirage? What if love is not a quiet harbor, protecting from life's storms, not a reflection of innermost feelings, and not the fulfillment of cherished desires, but something much more complex and demanding, something that pushes us towards self-improvement and the realization of our true potential? Modern culture has shrouded love in a veil of illusions, presenting it as a fairy tale romance, a myth about a soulmate, the idea that someone else can fill an inner void. These ideas are certainly comforting and soothing, but at the same time they act as a soporific for the soul. They plunge us into a state of passivity, encourage dependency, and shield us from a deeper and more disturbing truth. True love is not a search for comfort, but a path of transformation. For the eminent thinker C.G. Jung, love was not just an emotion, but a sacred fire, an alchemical process through which a person is purified, tested, and expands the boundaries of their consciousness. While others saw love as a desire for possession, Jung considered it a manifestation of individuality. Where others craved complete fusion, Jung spoke of differentiation, of preserving the uniqueness of each partner. Love, in his opinion, is not the dissolution of two halves into a single whole, but a union of two self-sufficient individuals who choose to walk through life together, remaining true to themselves and their principles. When reflecting on love, the question often arises, are we looking for a reflection of ourselves in another person or someone completely different? Carl Jung viewed the human psyche as a vast, symbolic space, where every lover, every passion, and every wound received in a relationship are not random events, but important psychological manifestations and rituals of awakening. These experiences highlight our shadow, awaken the inner feminine, anima, or masculine, animus, essence, and reveal those parts of our soul that have remained unfulfilled. Here it is important to ask ourselves, is love a refuge from reality or just a way to mask it? Does it push us towards growth and development, or does it keep us in our comfort zone? How real are our feelings, and are they merely a projection of our desires and fears onto another person? It is from this confrontation between the illusory idea of love and its deep Jungian meaning that a true understanding of this feeling begins. This is not a denial of romance or beauty, but a call to authenticity. Only through a clear vision of love can wholeness be achieved. Jung taught that love is not an end goal, but a continuous process, a kind of crucible in which the integration of our contradictions and the becoming of a fuller version of ourselves takes place in the presence of another person. So let us embark on this fascinating journey of self-discovery through love with open eyes and an awakened heart. Let us turn our gaze to the first distinctive sign of genuine feeling. Love is devoid of the spirit of possessiveness. There is love that binds with chains and love that bestows freedom. Often people mistakenly take the first manifestation for true feeling. They utter the sacramental "I love you," but deep down they mean the selfish "I need you." They clothe their attachment in the guise of ostentatious devotion, but behind this facade lies a deep fear, the fear of loss, loneliness, and facing the unknown. For this reason, they desperately cling to the object of their affection, naively believing that the tighter the grip, the stronger their union will be. However, love, true love, in the understanding of Carl Jung, revealed through the prism of symbolism, is not a clenched fist, but an open palm. Jung deeply understood that what many mistakenly call love is actually just a form of unhealthy attachment, a projection of inner emotional wounds and unmet needs onto another person. The feeling of possessiveness does not stem from abundance and fullness, but from a gaping void and lack. It expresses not a sincere, "I see you and accept you as you are," but rather is dictated by a panic-stricken fear. "I'm afraid you'll leave me." At its core lies not joyful presence, but agonizing anxiety of absence. Perhaps someone has been instilled with the idea that jealousy is an undeniable proof of the strength of feelings and care. that the obsessive desire to keep another person close at any cost, even through control and sophisticated manipulations, is the highest manifestation of devotion. However, it is worth looking deeper. Possessiveness does not nourish the soul, but mercilessly suffocates it in its embrace. And the soul, as the insightful Jung taught, can only unfold and flourish in an atmosphere of freedom and trust. In his deep conviction, love driven by the desire for possession is not a genuine feeling, but rather serves as a manifestation of the ego's deep fear of the mutability of being. True love, he said, requires incredible courage, not in holding on, but in the ability to let go. Everyone is probably familiar with this kind of love, when it feels like something taken for granted. It doesn't make demands, but gently offers, doesn't limit freedom, but rather promotes personal growth. Instead of ultimatums, it expresses trust, which, however, is not blind, but stems from inner harmony and integrity. In the context of Jungian psychology, when two people are still captive to their unconscious projections, they may feel the need to possess a partner, naively believing that the relationship can heal their internal conflicts. However, as the author notes, this approach inevitably leads to a merging of personalities, dependence, and stagnation in development. In such relationships, one partner becomes a jailer and the other a prisoner, which leads to the cessation of personal growth and the suppression of the self. In contrast, when love arises between two individuals striving for self-realization and development, it takes on a sacred character. In such a union, each partner becomes a witness to the other's personal development rather than an obstacle in their path. There is no place in such relationships for coercion to diminish one's own personality. On the contrary, the desire to expand the boundaries of one's self is encouraged. Imagine a life partner who sincerely rejoices in your desire for solitude, who fully supports your creative endeavors even if they involve risk, who deeply realizes that physical distance does not mean spiritual separation. This person does not experience fear of loss, because their intention is not to possess you as an object. They firmly understand that your inner integrity does not pose a threat to the relationship, but rather is its solid foundation. As the eminent psychologist Carl Jung once remarked, "Where love flourishes in all its fullness, there is no place for the desire for power. Conversely, where the thirst for power reigns, love is clearly lacking." The desire to possess another person is a manifestation of power, skillfully disguised as love. However, true love has no need for domination and control. It seeks a sincere meeting of two hearts, not conquest and subjugation. In this regard, everyone should ask themselves important questions. Does your love bind hand and foot or bestow a blessing? Does it imprison or, on the contrary, inspire new achievements? Do you cling to your partner out of fear, or do you take your place next to them, driven by faith and trust? To truly love someone means to respect their freedom and personal space, even if that freedom goes against your own sense of security and comfort. It means sincerely saying, "I walk alongside you on life's path, but I do not intend to live your life for you. I am not your missing piece, and you are not mine. We are both whole and self-sufficient individuals who freely choose to be together again and again." Such love is not a fairy tale idyll, but a mature and conscious feeling that liberates and transforms. It may not be the easiest path, but it is certainly the true one. Shall we turn our gaze to the less illuminated corners of the soul? The second distinctive sign of a genuine connection lies in the acceptance of the shadow sides of personality. To strive to love only the bright manifestations in a person means to be content with only part of the truth. Modern society persistently calls for the search for an ideal partner, woven from kindness, patience, confidence, and inexhaustible optimism. We are led to believe that love is finding someone who gives only pleasant sensations, who never stumbles, and who fully meets our expectations. However, love that is limited to only glossy and flawless aspects is not a true feeling, but only our own projection. As Carl Jung insightfully noted, every person carries a shadow, features hidden in the depths of the subconscious that the conscious mind refuses to recognize. These are the qualities that we learn to suppress from childhood: anger, envy, shame, fear, and even unrealized talents. The shadow is not an embodiment of evil, but only a suppressed part of our essence. It is not an enemy, but a missing link in achieving wholeness. And just as each of us carries our own shadow, so does the one we love. Sincere love for another person implies not denying their dark sides, but accepting them with an open heart and a clear gaze. The person standing before us is not just a set of virtues, but a complex and contradictory personality. They are not immune to mistakes and fluctuations. Over time, they will inevitably reveal those parts of themselves that they once tried to hide even from themselves. Love tests us with the question of whether we are ready to be there, not only in moments of triumph and joy, but also in periods of emotional torment and vulnerability. Can we see the shadows within another person without seeking to eradicate or condemn them, but accepting them as an integral part of their complex and multifaceted personality? Carl Jung argued that love that ignores the shadow aspects is merely a mirage. Often when we fall in love, we are not enchanted by the person themselves, but by an idealized image we have created, an unconscious projection of our own inner aspirations and needs. We endow the other with strength that we ourselves lack, see in them a source of warmth when we are gripped by the cold of loneliness, and seek certainty where we are tormented by doubts. This projection may seem magical and intoxicating, but it has nothing to do with true love. The catch lies in the fact that sooner or later this projection begins to fade, and then we may feel disappointment and rejection. It seems to us that we have been betrayed and deceived, but we should blame not the other person, but the illusory image that we have imposed on them. True love lies in abandoning projections and fantasies, discarding imposed ideas, and seeing the real person with all their virtues and flaws. It is from this moment that the real work of love begins, requiring patience, understanding, and a willingness to accept the other as they are. In those very moments when a life partner experiences exhaustion, is gripped by fear, tormented by doubts, or ablaze with anger, there is an urgent need to show the highest degree of intimacy, not blind adoration, but sincere recognition of their vulnerability. To say aloud, "I see your shadow, and I stay with you," driven not by a sense of guilt, but by deep compassion. Not to save, but to witness their inner world. It is important to emphasize that this is not an excuse for cruelty or harm. Jung's concept of the shadow is by no means an indulgence for abuse. Rather, it is a call to building conscious relationships where each partner has the opportunity to reveal their true essence, even with all its imperfections, and to feel support in love, not in a world of illusions. Imagine two people in the epicenter of a conflict who, instead of mutual accusations, ask questions. What wound is bleeding now? What part of me is experiencing fear? Such frankness can transform pain into deep understanding. This acceptance creates conditions for healing, occurring not in solitude but in shared presence. The question arises, are you capable of loving without demanding perfection? Are you ready to allow another to be real, with all their shortcomings and human weaknesses, and at the same time surround them with tenderness? Can you recognize that what irritates you in another person may be a reflection of unrecognized aspects of your own personality? The eminent psychologist Carl Jung once remarked that our irritations towards other people can become the key to self-knowledge. In this context, the shadow of a partner ceases to be an obstacle in the relationship, turning into a reflection of our own unconscious. Thus, love relationships become not just a way of establishing connection, but also a powerful tool for personal transformation. Acceptance of the shadow does not mean justifying shortcomings, but rather integrating them into the overall picture of the personality. This implies understanding that no one can be truly loved until they are seen completely, including those aspects that they are used to hiding. It is in this that one of the signs of genuine love lies, not in refusing to recognize flaws, but in being willing to stay with the dark sides of the personality, offering them the light of understanding. In the atmosphere of such sacred acceptance, the soul gains freedom, masks fall away, and what remains is not an illusion, but something truly valuable, love based on reality. True love does not require a person to remain unchanged. It does not protect from change and does not lull into a state of stagnation. Genuine love in the Jungian sense is not just a soothing balm, but a transforming flame. Love in its highest form is like a mirror, which, however, is not always flattering. It reflects not only strengths, but also fluctuations, fears, and unrealized potential. Thus, love calls for development, for becoming a more complete personality, for the courage to be oneself in all fullness. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung put forward a theory according to which the most important task of the human psyche is individuation, a continuous process of self-knowledge and self-realization lasting throughout life. Individuation is not a striving for an unattainable ideal, but rather a harmonious union of all aspects of the personality, conscious and unconscious, light and dark sides, past experience and potential opportunities. This path of development is not linear, but represents an ascending spiral where each turn is a new stage of self-improvement. Along this path, true, healthy relationships do not hinder personal growth. On the contrary, they serve as a catalyst for it. A person who loves sincerely not only dispels doubts and insecurities in their partner, but also delicately brings them to the surface, not to cause pain, but to facilitate healing. They do not question the partner's value, but help them uncover their true essence. As an example, consider a situation where one partner feels the need for creative expression, such as writing, but is held back by the fear of the unknown. In this case, a loving partner will not ignore this desire or demand immediate results. Instead, they will show attention, support the endeavors, and create favorable conditions for creative fulfillment. This is an example of genuine partnership, of love in the Jungian sense. Such a partner will not use the other person's growth to satisfy their own ego. They will not manipulate their weaknesses or wounds, belittle their ambitions, or fear their independence. On the contrary, they will be a careful guardian of their development, being there not as an owner, but as a supportive presence. Feeling discomfort in a loving relationship is not necessarily a sign of failure, but rather an indication of sincere feelings. Personal growth is impossible in an atmosphere of complacency. It requires tension, awakening, and a gentle but noticeable impact when you are seen through and through with all your strengths and weaknesses and encouraged to unlock your potential. Carl Jung viewed every relationship as a kind of melting pot where profound transformation can occur. Some people prefer to stay on the surface, circling in a familiar dance, but others, consciously or unconsciously, throw themselves into the heart of the matter. They bravely face the truth about themselves, accept the challenge, experience turmoil, but ultimately emerge from this experience more whole, clear, and alive. You can recognize such love by a person who does not allow you to hide behind old beliefs and familiar masks, who sees through your defenses, but does so with compassion, not cruelty. This person reminds you of your inner strength when you succumb to fear. Such love is not cozy complacency, but a revelation that constantly asks questions. What in you has not yet been lived? What has not yet awakened? Who would you be if you stopped running away from yourself? When fate brings you together with a person whose presence does not dull your individuality, but rather emphasizes its facets, you embark on a path that the great psychologist Carl Jung called conscious love. This is a union where two hearts strive not only for coexistence, but also for personal growth and self-improvement. This path is not always strewn with roses. Development inevitably entails conflict, because the old must give way to the new, and illusions must dissipate, leaving a bitter taste of regret. However, when both partners consciously choose growth, truth, and spirituality over comfort and stability, their relationship becomes something more than just a union of two people. They become a sacred temple where the alchemy of souls takes place. As Carl Jung wrote, the meeting of two personalities is like the interaction of two chemical elements. If a reaction occurs, both undergo transformation. Therefore, it is important to ask yourself, does your love make you weaker or, on the contrary, give you courage? Does it preserve your old self or awaken the potential dormant within? Love that stimulates growth is not always gentle and cloudless, but it always has a sacred character. It is a quiet fire that burns illusions and exposes the true essence, just as gold is purified of impurities. Moving on to the next sign of true love, it is worth noting that it goes beyond simple passion. The first spark that ignites between two people seems like something divine. Meeting a certain person transforms the world around you, filling it with bright colors. His voice seems painfully familiar and his presence intoxicating. We tend to explain this by chemistry, predestination, or soul kinship. Perhaps this is the case, but often there is something else behind it. A meeting not of two complete personalities, but of two projections, two idealized images. At the very beginning of romantic relationships, as Carl Jung insightfully noted, our heart is rarely captivated by a real person in all their fullness. Rather, we are fascinated by that part of ourselves that has so far remained unexplored for us, an unconscious image, a kind of psychic ideal. Jung christened these internal archetypal images with the terms anima and animus, which are key concepts in analytical psychology. The anima, this inner femininity that dwells in the depths of the male psyche, manifests itself as emotionality, intuition, and mystery, often appearing in dreams or in the form of sudden longing. The animus, in turn, represents the inner masculinity within a woman's psyche, embodying courage, rationality, and authority, sounding like a voice of inner conviction or calling. These archetypes, inherited from our collective unconscious, are deeply symbolic and universal. When we encounter someone who somehow resonates with our anima or animus, it awakens in us not only a sense of attraction, but also something much deeper, a memory of forgotten parts of our own soul. As a result, we begin to project our expectations and desires onto this person, seeing in them not who they truly are, but what we have longed for. We endow them with qualities that live within us, but that we have not yet been able to accept and develop. He appears before us as a fearless protector, she as an ethereal muse. However, it is important to remember that these are just images, not real personalities. This is why the fervent passion that ignites at the dawn of a relationship often overwhelms with its intensity. After all, it does not grow on the soil of reality, but is rather a mental encounter, abounding in symbols but lacking a solid foundation. And when this projection inevitably dissipates, the real person appears before our eyes, with all their flaws, complexities, and human weaknesses. This moment is often mistakenly perceived as disappointment, although in reality it is an invitation to a deeper understanding. The question arises, will there be enough wisdom to look at another person without the veil of illusions? Will infatuation be able to grow into true intimacy? Will fantasies be allowed to dissolve, giving way to genuine love? True love does not reject passion as such, but transforms it. That which flares up in a bright flame must be tempered by presence, patience, and a willingness to see in the other not an ideal, but a personality. Only then does love acquire the ability to stand the test of time, moving from fleeting charm to longevity. This transition is certainly associated with a certain painfulness. The beloved is overthrown from the pedestal, the mirror of illusions cracks. And yet, it is in this cracking that something deeper and more authentic is born. Relationships move to a new level where not myth interacts with myth, but soul with soul. It is worth paying attention to couples who successfully overcome this turning point. They no longer need their partner to play an imposed role. They see each other beyond projections and choose each other not because of who they once seemed to be, but because of who they now really know. This is the liberating power of love. Anima and animus are not discarded but integrated into the personality. The feelings they inspired were not false. They served as guides, pointing the way to something important within oneself. And now, when the projection is withdrawn, it becomes possible to meet another person not as a figment of imagination, but as a fellow traveler on life's journey. The fourth distinctive sign of genuine feeling lies in its resilience in the face of vanishing illusions. True love does not collapse under the burden of harsh reality, but, on the contrary, flourishes, gains depth, and finds a new birth. This is no longer just fleeting passion, but conscious presence. It is important to ask yourself, does your choice in favor of this person remain unchanged when the veil of charm falls away? And does he make the same choice in relation to you? If the answer yes sounds not because of the power of fantasies, but despite their fading, then love acquires a solid foundation. Moving on to the fifth sign, it is worth noting that true feeling gives a sense of wholeness, not inferiority. It is widely believed that love is the search for one's soulmate, a person who will complement you, fill the gaping hole in your imperfect self. This idea certainly has a romantic flair, but it is deeply flawed. Carl Jung warned against the danger of such a myth. The desire to find completeness in another person means entering into a relationship not as a self-sufficient personality, but as a being torn by internal contradictions, wounded, yearning, and not aware of its own integrity. Such an insatiable thirst is not capable of generating true intimacy, it only fuels codependency. Genuine love does not grow out of need, it is not a search for a savior, and not a vain hope that another person can drown out the inner emptiness. Love in its true essence is born from abundance when two people meet who have known their own depths and decided to share a life path, embarking on this journey from a point of inner harmony. At the very heart of the Jungian concept of individuation lies a deep truth about human integrity. Individuation, according to Jung, is not just a striving for perfection, but rather a journey to the full acceptance of oneself in all its complexity. This is a thorny path of self-discovery, requiring the courage to face one's shadow, reconcile internal contradictions, and reclaim lost parts of one's personality. Until this process is initiated, the human soul remains fragmented, and relationships become a mirror of this internal fragmentation. When an individual enters a romantic relationship driven by a sense of incompleteness, their partner inadvertently becomes a substitute for the necessary inner work. In such dysfunctional relationships, one partner may assume the role of caregiver while the other occupies a dependent position. True needs are replaced by a distorted view of love, and attachment becomes a burdensome weight. The sacred space of intimacy is defiled by the unspoken demand, "Fill my emptiness, make me whole." However, love is not a clinic for emotional wounds, but a partnership between two self-sufficient individuals. Each partner bears personal responsibility for their own emotional wounds and commits to continuous personal growth. There is a clear difference between those who maintain their inner center even in romantic relationships. They do not dissolve into another person and do not demand that their partner relieve their feelings of loneliness. They can endure solitude without fear or despair and can disagree without destroying the relationship. They offer support but do not try to save. They listen attentively but do not allow themselves to be consumed by others' problems. In such healthy relationships, love ceases to be a crutch and becomes a genuine celebration. Each partner brings their whole self to the union, their passions, their fears, their dreams, and their moments of silence. There is no need to possess the other person because each feels self-sufficient. There is no room for despair because no one owes anything. All that remains is the daily, conscious choice to be together, dictated not by need, but by freedom. Carl Jung warned that by assigning another person the role of completer of our personality, we reduce them to a projection of our deepest, sometimes unconscious, aspirations. We burden our partners with excessive expectations that they cannot fulfill, demanding that they be a parent, a savior, someone greater than they are. In doing so, we destroy the very intimacy we so desperately seek. Therefore, it is worth asking ourselves, do I love this person as an individual, or do I simply need them to fill the gaping voids within myself? If love diminishes dignity, makes one more dependent and more timid when alone, it is not yet true love. But if love, on the contrary, strengthens one's sense of self, supports independence and respects personal space, then it is something real. This is one of the signs of genuine love. It does not complete, but reflects the wholeness that a person has already begun to acquire. In this state of fulfillment, love ceases to be an escape from oneself and becomes a return to one's true essence. Another characteristic of true love is its spiritual dimension. In romantic relationships, there are moments that cannot be rationally explained, a gaze that seems endless, a meeting that feels destined, a sudden realization on an intuitive level that meeting this person is not a coincidence, but the result of the action of ancient and invisible forces. Carl Jung did not rush to dismiss such feelings as a random coincidence or a figment of the imagination. He saw them as a manifestation of an archetypal reality deeply rooted in the realm of the human soul. For Jung, love went beyond psychology, acquiring a spiritual dimension. He referred to the highest form of this feeling as hieros gamos, sacred marriage. This archetype is far from legal formalities or romantic fantasies. It symbolizes inner and outer unity, a mysterious union where opposites, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, enter into a meaningful relationship. It is a union that reflects the deep alchemy of the self, the reconciliation of all divided aspects of personality. When two people meet on this level, their connection takes on a numinous character, charged with a sense of eternity. Such relationships are often accompanied by synchronicities, amazing parallels, mirror dreams, and inexplicable closeness. Jung called them meaningful coincidences or synchronicities, indicating a deep order of the psyche and the cosmos. It may seem that the universe has conspired for this meeting, and in a symbolic sense it is indeed so. However, the sacred nature of such a union lies not only in its origin but also in the demands it places on the partners after the relationship begins. The spiritual depth of love is not passive enjoyment but a conscious involvement in something that transcends personal boundaries. Love transforms into an active practice, a daily act of presence, forgiveness, and profound respect. In this context, the object of love ceases to be merely a fellow traveler. It becomes a reflection of the soul's evolution. Their presence awakens not only passion, but also an awareness of one's purpose. The beloved becomes a catalyst, prompting not just the experience of emotions, but also transformation. They reveal hidden aspects of personality, secret desires, and the deepest symbols. Through this interaction, initiation into oneself occurs. This is the essence of hieros gamos, not in achieving an ideal, but in ascending through sincerity. It is a gradual unveiling of truth between two people who see in each other not an object of possession or a function, but a sacred image of wholeness in the process of becoming. Such love requires deep humility, as the sacred is not owned, but revered. Carl Jung warned that the numinous, if misunderstood, can lead to self-aggrandizement. The spiritual dimension of love requires not fantasies, but discipline and devotion. How does this manifest in practice? It manifests in two people staying together not only in joy, but also in sorrow, viewing conflict not as a defeat, but as an opportunity for spiritual growth. They see in their partner not a savior or an enemy, but a soul walking the same path toward authenticity. Consider a couple who prays together, not necessarily through words, but through mutual presence, sharing silence, dreaming, and reflecting. They talk not only about everyday affairs and responsibilities, but also about symbols, meaning, and transformation. In such a union, love becomes a sacred vessel, a place where the divine manifests through the mundane. Carl Jung, a prominent researcher of the human soul, asserted that the life path is like a mythical circle, where each step is marked by symbols and trials. Love, entering this arena, ceases to be a mere escape from reality, transforming into a journey to the innermost secrets of existence. The beloved becomes not just a companion, but a guide, a living embodiment of an archetype, helping to remember one's purpose in the grand tapestry of life. Therefore, when questioning the authenticity of one's feelings, one should ask, does my love elevate my spirit? Does it open new horizons of wonder and delight for me? Does it strengthen my faith in the incomprehensible? If the answer is affirmative, then one has stepped onto the path of true love, which transcends the personal without denying its value. It is a love that honors both body and soul, remembering that the sacred is present here and now in the depth of another person's gaze, seen without illusions and cherished with reverence. Perhaps someone craves love that brings only peace, serenity, and comfort. However, such love, despite its attractiveness, may never touch the depths of the soul. True, transformative love will not allow one to remain the same. It will challenge, stir the waters of the unconscious, revealing those corners of oneself that would otherwise remain unseen. Jung deeply understood that the people with whom we establish the closest connections appear in our lives not by chance. We are drawn to each other because each of us is a mirror, reflecting the unfinished aspects of the other's personality. A partner is not just a companion, but a reflection. Through them, we see those parts of ourselves that are hidden in the semi-consciousness. Ingrained patterns of behavior, emotional wounds, resistance to personal growth. That is why even the deepest feelings rarely pass without turbulent episodes, and the closest relationships sometimes become a source of the strongest experiences. It is not about flaws in the relationship, but about the desire to uncover something new. When a partner hits a nerve, provoking jealousy, irritation, or a desire to defend oneself, it is worth stopping and thinking. Instead of asking, "Why are they doing this?" it is better to ask oneself, "What within me needs awakening?" Carl Jung asserted that interpersonal conflicts often stem from the mechanism of projection. A person sees in another what they have not yet accepted in themselves. The partner's stubbornness may be a reflection of one's own unrealized willpower, and their emotional detachment may be evidence of suppressed vulnerability. Another person's courage may evoke fear of one's own openness. These reflections are not a punishment, but an invitation to self-knowledge. Thus, conflict is not an enemy of love, but rather a gateway to its deepening. It points to those areas where a person is still acting under the influence of fears, past experiences, or unconscious scenarios. It is through this friction that awareness is born. Not every disagreement has to leave a scar, but every moment of discomfort can become a valuable lesson if there is a willingness to learn. Carl Jung viewed relationships as a melting pot in which the process of individuation takes place. The closer the connection between two people, the more intense the experiences become. It is in this crucible of trials that the true self is forged. If both partners can withstand the tension that arises, neither avoiding it nor succumbing to its destructive force, but consciously accepting it, then love takes on a sacred meaning. Such love does not strive for an ideal, it thirsts for the knowledge of truth. It does not fear difficult discussions, nor does it run from moments of silence or sadness. Instead, it boldly addresses discomfort and asks, "What opportunities for growth are hidden here?" The question arises, do you view your relationship as a cozy refuge or as fertile ground for personal growth? Are you inclined to retreat when difficulties arise, or do you remain open to new revelations? Lasting love requires the courage not only to love another person, but also to see your reflection in their eyes again and again, to forgive their imperfections and to acknowledge your own shortcomings. In such love, each partner becomes not just a life companion, but a pilgrim striving for spiritual growth. The path they walk together is not always strewn with roses, but it is filled with authenticity and meaning. The seventh distinguishing characteristic of genuine love lies in its ability not to punish but to awaken dormant strengths, not to inflict pain but to unlock potential, not to subjugate but to liberate the unique individual that each person is destined to become. Love is not an end goal, not a possession, and not a fleeting spark. It is a sacred journey that traverses joyful and sorrowful moments, through light and shadow, through illusions and insights. It not only connects two hearts, but also impels them to transform. Carl Jung profoundly understood that love, in its highest manifestation, is not the end of the road, but its inspiring beginning. True relationships do not offer an escape from oneself. On the contrary, they illuminate the path to self-discovery. They do not provide ready-made answers, but bring to the surface hidden aspects of the soul, calling them to reunification, harmony, and wholeness. Thus, we have considered 7 signs of love that does not enslave but grants freedom. Love that accepts shadow aspects not as flaws, but as an integral part of a sacred whole. Love that inspires personal growth, becoming the fertile ground in which the deepest self takes root. Love that transcends projections, allowing one to see through the veil of illusions. Love that arises not from a sense of inadequacy, but from the union of 2 self-sufficient individuals making a conscious choice to be together. Love that possesses a spiritual dimension, reflecting eternity in everyday manifestations. Love that challenges and thereby transforms. Each of these aspects is presented not as a strict prescription, but rather as an opportunity for profound self-analysis. It is not a set of rules, but a call to exploration. And the most inspiring of these calls draws one into the depths of self-awareness, compassion, and courage. True love implies a gaze devoid of illusions, the ability to see not only the attractive qualities, but also the flaws, and yet to affirm, despite everything, I remain by your side. It means accompanying the other person not in the pursuit of complete fusion, but in a spirit of trust, not trying to control, but striving for genuine communication. The question arises, is a person ready to embark on this path? Are they ready to love not only with their heart, but with their entire soul? For it is in such love that there lies not just a connection, but a transformation, not just convenience, but a high purpose. The loved one becomes not just a life companion, but a mirror reflecting their essence, a mentor leading to self-knowledge, an initiator of change, and the person, in turn, becomes the same for them. This is the essence of Jungian love. It is not a fleeting infatuation with passion, but a continuous process of becoming. It is a love that requires a person to manifest all aspects of their personality, and at the same time to accept the other in all their fullness. Wholeness meets wholeness. Light touches shadow. The I addresses the I. May every step on life's journey be conscious and discerning. May the feeling of love arise not from the desire to fill an inner void, but from the desire to attain fullness of being. And may this feeling, regardless of the form it takes, steadily bring one closer to the understanding of one's own essence. In this lies the priceless gift of true love. In this consists its great